Okay, for years, literally years, the biggest question in finance, maybe even in tech, has been this. Will SpaceX ever go public? Well, it looks like we finally have an answer. The whole conversation has shifted from if to when, and all signs are pointing to a massive IPO in 2026. But you know what? The real story here isn't just the fact that it's happening, it's the absolutely mind-bending number they're aiming for.
$1.5 trillion. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. That's the valuation SpaceX is reportedly targeting for its IPO. It's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. We are talking about a company that could become one of the most valuable on the entire planet, basically overnight.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth is a single private company, one that's not even public yet, worth more than the entire economy of most countries on this planet? What is the logic here? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unravel today. Let's dig in.
All right, to really get our heads around this, the first thing we have to understand is that this IPO isn't just big, it's playing on a totally different field. We're talking about a valuation that basically rewrites the rulebook. Investors aren't being asked to compare SpaceX to other aerospace companies. They're being asked to see it as something entirely new, a category of one.
And this chart right here, it tells you everything you need to know. On one side, you've got the old guard, the legacy aerospace giants. They trade at, less than 1.5 times their yearly revenue? That's pretty standard. But then you have SpaceX. They're looking for a multiple of 65. 65! That isn't just a premium, that's a completely different universe. It's a statement. It says investors aren't buying what SpaceX is today, they're betting on a total revolution.
And the size of the offering itself is just historic. We're talking about raising over $30 billion that would absolutely shatter every global record that's ever been set. To put that in perspective, even if they only offered a tiny 2% of the company, it would still be a bigger IPO than Saudi Aramco's, which was the largest in history. Just wow.
And you might be wondering, why now, after all this time? Well, it all goes back to this one simple comment from Elon Musk just a little while ago. When asked about reports of an IPO, he just replied, as usual, Eric is accurate. And that was it. That's what lit the fuse. After years and years of, no, we're staying private, this was the confirmation everyone was waiting for. But okay, to really get why this is so monumental, we've got to look past the cool rockets.
So, let's get back to that crazy number. How in the world do you justify $1.5 trillion? Well, the first step is to throw out the biggest misconception people have about SpaceX. If you think this is just a rocket company, you're missing the entire picture. It's so much more than that now.
The key idea you need to grasp is this. SpaceX isn't a rocket company. It's an orbital infrastructure platform. Now, what does that mean? Well, think about Amazon and AWS. Amazon didn't just build a store. They built the underlying plumbing, the servers, the data centers that powers a huge chunk of the internet. That's exactly what SpaceX is doing. But for space, they're building the fundamental infrastructure for the entire low Earth orbit economy.
In this platform, it's built on 3 massive pillars that all work together. First, you have Starship, which is their heavy-lift launch system. Think of it as the ultimate space truck. Then there's Starlink, their global satellite internet service. And the third piece, which is just starting to emerge, is orbital AI data centers. Now, the crucial thing to understand is that these are not separate companies. They're all part of one giant, self-reinforcing ecosystem. Each part makes the others more powerful. It's a flywheel, and it creates this insane competitive advantage.
Okay, so within that incredible ecosystem, there's one piece that's really the financial engine driving this whole thing, and that's Starlink. Why? Because it brings something to the table that is almost unheard of in the high-stakes, high-risk world of aerospace, and that one thing is predictability.
Right now, Starlink has over 8.5 million paying subscribers all around the world, and that number is climbing so fast it's projected to blow past 10 million by the time the IPO happens. Now, think about that. That's millions of people paying a bill every single month. This creates a steady, predictable, recurring revenue stream. That's the holy grail for Wall Street. It's the kind of financial stability that lets them bet big on the future, and it's the bedrock of this entire valuation.
And if you want to see what dominance looks like in a picture, well, here it is. Right now, SpaceX controls about 65% of all active satellites orbiting our planet. 65%! Think about that. No company, no government has ever had that kind of control over orbital real estate. They are literally building and defining the highways and byways of near-Earth space. It's unprecedented.
And really, that's the whole ballgame. That's the key difference right there. You see, traditional aerospace companies live and die by these huge, one-off government or commercial contracts. It's a feast or famine business. But Starlink, with its subscription model, brings in a steady, reliable flow of cash every single month. And it's that predictability that gives investors the confidence they need to buy into SpaceX's incredibly audacious, long-term vision.
Okay, so it all sounds amazing, right? But let's pump the brakes for a minute. A story this big, with this much money on the line, is never that simple. We need a reality check. The road to a $1.5 trillion IPO is absolutely loaded with risks, not to mention a long history of the founder not wanting to do this at all.
I mean, for more than a decade, this quote right here was the company line. Elon Musk said it over and over again. SpaceX will stay private. Why? Because he was convinced that the pressure from Wall Street to hit quarterly profit targets would get in the way of the real mission. Making humanity a multiplanetary species. The big fear was always that Wall Street's obsession with the next 3 months would kill the long-term dream of getting to Mars.
And the hurdles to get this IPO done are very real. You've got the classic stuff, like volatile markets. You've got massive execution risk. Starship has to actually work perfectly. There's always regulatory and political drama. But the big one, the one that really worries investors, it's the extreme financial opacity. We just don't know the numbers. Their accounting has been described as more of an art than a science, and that kind of secrecy is a huge red flag when you're asking for $1.5 trillion. So you've got all these risks, this history of reluctance, this financial secrecy. So how on earth did we get to a point where a $1 trillion+ IPO is even on the table? Well, the answer is pretty simple, actually. It all comes down to the absolutely explosive growth the company's value has seen on the private markets. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's absolutely wild. In just the last 18 months, the company's private valuation, what investors are willing to pay for its shares behind the scenes, has almost quadrupled. It went from about $210 billion to a mind-blowing $800 billion. This incredible surge is the launchpad. It's what makes an audacious public target of over $1 trillion feel, well, almost achievable.
And this table here kind of breaks down the math behind that big headline number. Look, that latest private valuation of $800 billion, that already puts them at a price-to-sales multiple of about 35 times. Now, to get to that $1.5 trillion target, investors have to be willing to pay 65 times revenue. Yes, that is a huge leap of faith. But with the momentum we just saw in the private markets, it's a leap that a lot of people seem willing to take.
And that really brings us full circle, back to the most important takeaway of this whole thing. The market isn't just putting a price on a company here. It's pricing an entire ecosystem. You can't value the rocket separately from the internet service. That $1.5 trillion number isn't for a piece of the puzzle. It's the price for the whole shebang, the launch, the network, the future of data and orbit, all rolled into one powerful package.
So in the end, the question this IPO forces us to ask in 2026 isn't just about stock prices or valuations. It's much bigger than that. It's really about who is going to own the critical infrastructure of our future. Will it be nations operating here on the ground, or will it be the private companies that are right now, as we speak, building new empires in orbit? That's the real question.